So, welcome to Wealth Revolution, the podcast where we break free from the old financial system and explore the new economy, conscious wealth, and personal freedom. I'm your host, Luke Harford, and today we have another great guest joining us. Our guest today is Benedict Brennan. He's the founder of Holistic Human. And I've worked with Ben a little on when I was in my crypto business, but I've not really gone deeper into conversation about his business. So yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Ben and let him just explain a bit about what he does in his business, and we're just going to have a discussion from there. So yeah, over to you, Ben.
Good to see you, Luke. Thanks for inviting me on.
Great to
Yeah,
have you.
it's a voyage of discovery, I guess, for me,
Yeah,
exploration, just trying different things and trying to bring all the things I learn to the work I do. And so I guess that the I guess what it comes down to is living my life in a way which is I guess it's what would the phrase be? It's practice what I preach. So yeah, I work now in the health sphere of nutritional therapy, health coaching, but that is quite a broad brush group of clients I have, from people with quite serious chronic disease to weight loss, but it also touches quite deeply into inner work, shadow work,
yeah,
spiritual work, consciousness, and so on. Because for me, I don't think you can separate the two. I think
no,
anyone's health really, um, you can look at it from a superficial perspective, but you you won't get very far with most clients. You might be able to say, okay, take these supplements, change your diet, maybe get some more sunshine and exercise, and then. But what I've realized is that often change takes time, and it also almost everyone has issues that they need to look at to grow, and I guess that from my perspective, while I've done a lot of learning, while I've done lot of reading and research, for me, the essence of it is really what I've learned from my own personal experience
yeah,
over a
yeah,
lifetime. And I started out flying in the Air Force and eventually joined. I flew for British Airways as a
oh wow,
pilot for
yeah,
British Airways, and I that was a career that spanned 30 years altogether, and I guess there was a chain reaction of events that started just before COVID, but COVID also was a part of it. And I realized that people's health was something that I'd wanted to be involved in, helping others in that way for a long, long time. And COVID was the push.
yeah.
My mum
It
dying
pushed a
was
lot of
another
people, COVID,
push.
didn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
unbelievable how many lives it's changed. And I
yeah,
think,
yeah,
generally speaking, for the better. It pushed people into kind of an awakening, I think.
yeah, yeah, for
Uh,
sure. Because you had time to stop, and it was almost like a meditative state, weren't it? We had time to slow down, stop. What we're going to do with all this time we never,
yeah,
ever had. It was almost, in some ways, it was positive for a lot of people, weren't
yeah.
it? Long term, yeah.
Well, I mean, the lockdown did press pause for a lot of people, but I think that they realized how miserable they were in many ways.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and actually that's I was thinking about what we might what might come up today for me in this conversation, and I do think that it is really so important to reflect on why are we doing anything in life? What is this all about? And so from a wealth consciousness perspective, it would be very easy to say that from a very superficial perspective, that money makes us happier or money is wealth. But that isn't
yeah,
how I see it in a way. In fact, most of the people that I know that are very wealthy are often not very happy, not
yeah.
content,
This is true.
and
Yeah, I see
and
this too.
and not healthy.
Yeah,
And so, you know, uh, so for me, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. I'm not sure what you're going to ask me or what
no,
you're
I
going
think I
to.
like it like this. keep it organic. I think this is one of the first podcasts I've done like this, and I thought, let's do it. I know you
Yeah.
quite well, and I know we'll just go for what comes up. But no, the right stuff's coming up. And I agree with what you say. Wealth itself, it's not just money. It's definitely not just money. I think I always express it as what we're really chasing is the feeling things give us. So I always ask myself when I enter, and I've actually was at a meetup this week, and there was this woman doing some inner work, and she was explaining, we should always be asking ourselves that before we do anything, what
Mm.
feeling am I chasing on this? Even if it's the gym, we kind of go to the gym, and sometimes it's I don't want to go to the gym, and but I know it's good for me. It's almost like medicine. But actually, what feeling are you chasing when you go to the gym? And it's always a good question. I know.
It's a
Um,
great question.
yeah,
And one could argue that in a way, and I say this again from my personal experience, but also from working with quite a lot of clients now over the years, is that in essence, you could simplify it and say what we're really seeking is a sense of contentment, and that's easy to just put a word on it. But what does that feel like?
what's that mean? Yeah,
What
yeah,
does contentment really mean? And I think for me, it became quite clear that in a way it was a settled nervous system, a sense of feeling safe within one's own skin, one's own body, a sense, not a sense of excitement or elatement, but not, but something akin to feeling warm or at ease, uh, um,
yeah.
able to regulate one's nervous system, not always be chasing excitement or the escapism of substances, uh,
That's
or
a big one. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and through my work, I think that when I started out on this new health kind of work for people, I think that I had a certain view of substances like addictive substances, things like drugs and alcohol, and smoking and things like that. And that's the ones we often think of as addictive.
turn to
But
it. Yeah,
actually, the truth is that it's much broader. Food is probably the most addictive substance in the world. And if you look at the
yeah,
people with like eating addictions, we all have it. We all have, to a certain degree, an eating addiction or eat issues around eating. So the things that we choose, we may know that they're not necessarily very nutritious or healthy. They might even do us harm, but we can't avoid them.
uh,
that tube of Pringles or the McDonald's. I think it's fairly clear that there are certain foods that are really nutritious and healthy, and there are certain foods that aren't. We don't need to get into that because that
yeah.
gets very deep then. But
I mean, it's kind of common sense that stuff, and I think it's more
mm,
deeper in it. It's like I've had this pattern of, and me and my wife were talking about it, and that was another subject that come up at the this session we did with this. It was like a wellness meetup we had in person, and one of the patterns we've got, and it's we realised something for the first time. It's built around shame, where we almost like eat and eat and eat and get to a point where we have to stop and then move into a really strong, almost like a 75-day hard type, energy of like, I'm gonna, do all the exercise and eat really, really healthy. And a lot of the reason when we catch ourselves overeating is to do with the emotions and when it's stressful. So we're eating out of like it's almost like a numbing habit. We'll eat bad things. It's nothing to do with like you say the nutrition or anything like that. It's when you're eating good.
absolutely,
I've been eating good now for a week, fresh fruit and healthy. I mean, I feel amazing. And
yeah,
I try and remember that. But as soon as if you start on then things like Pringles or everybody's got something and the chocolate crisps, you enjoy it. If you switch back, you kind of enjoy it for a little while, but then it soon spirals out of control. It's very addictive, and your mind changes. It almost changes the mind. I find the
yeah.
thought
Well, it
process. Yeah,
it it, it does, and at the root of all of this is identity. And this is where the consciousness side of things comes in because at
yeah,
the root of this there is a conflict going on inside. Um, and it's like it's all about this sense of self. Carl Jung talked about this, and this sense of identity. and we're continually trying to hold this sense of self together. And as it becomes threatened or weakened in some way, and that can often be due to childhood traumas, upsets, it can be more recent things as well. We then feel our identities under pressure, and this can tie directly into wealth. Like, I don't have enough, I feel worthless, I don't feel good enough, I don't, I'm not as wealthy as the next person, I'm not as well off as as my next door neighbor or the person I work with. And it's this constant competition. There's this sense of like unease, worthlessness inside. So what do? We go to substances that make us feel less less uncomfortable, for want of a better
Yeah.
expression. And that's when the addictive eating comes in, that's when the drinking comes in, that's when the but it can go another way. You can get addicted to exercise. You can get
Yeah.
addicted
Yeah.
anything that takes away that uncomfortable feeling. To me, this is the most fascinating thing of working with other people in this sphere, because I almost feel like at times I feel a bit selfish because I'm learning about myself at the same time. It's like a reflective process.
I think
Um,
that's the thing of a good coach, though, like, or a
yeah,
mentor, you've almost lived it. I like to get mentors and coaches that, yeah, have experienced it and that can guide and hold you accountable. I think that's the most important part of being a coach or a mentor, isn't it?
yeah,
I feel.
yeah. It is the most important part, and I think that's one of the reasons why it makes it so worthwhile. I sometimes wonder whether I should be paying the clients rather than them paying me.
Yeah.
uh, because ultimately, I don't think you can be a good coach unless you're willing to be self-reflective and to be critical of
No.
oneself, and to look within and to find one's own um, weak spots and pressure points and failings and egoic identities that and to me that's what the great fascination is. And I think one of the real fascinating things with working with you these last few years has been your approach to wealth consciousness, trying to redefine what really wealth is, because ultimately that is that's what I think, that's one of the fascinating questions. And I think it's one of the most interesting and valuable and relevant questions, because we live in a world which seems to be continually chasing wealth, but most of us never really define what that is for us.
No, no. And I think it's different for everybody. And I mean, I've come to the conclusion it's the actual wealth is being conscious. It's very rewarding and it can really change your life, as you know, like when you start to study these models like Hawkins' map of consciousness and Carl Jung, and
Yeah,
it opens your eyes to new ways of thinking. It can really heal you from the inside out, and then usually when you heal from the inside, your outside world changes with it. So it's that's the true
exactly.
wealth. I think that's the true wealth. And
Yeah,
it takes people a while to get there. Not, you have to guide people into that. This stuff can sound way too woo woo for many people if you come
yeah,
into it,
of course it can.
too quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, but I mean, from this isn't going to apply to everybody. But for me, what from a wealth perspective, it's things like having choice,
yeah,
a
yeah,
certain sense of freedom. And so um, now, let's say you want to be able to travel. So we're both in this same boat. So we like to travel. I like to travel because I love to experience new cultures.
yeah,
I like to be able to go to places that, the weather is nice. I love landscapes. I love the mountains, but I also love the coast. Um, I love to listen to different languages and absorb people, the vibration of a city, for example, or escape into the countryside. Now, I love the freedom of that, but not everybody has that choice to do that. And that choice comes down to certain lifestyle choices, because there's compromises in traveling.
yeah,
Connection with others may not be as close as you might want that you would have in a community, for example, in a stable, steady community. So you've got to compromise there. But on the other hand, you've also got to have the assets to be able to travel, because it costs money.
mm, yeah.
But the question is that I think for a lot of people, they think that they've got to have a lot of money to live that way. in my experience, you don't actually need that much money. You can actually, I've done a lot of hard budgeting, and I reckon a baseline budget, depending on where you go, would be something in British pounds would be something between 15 and 25,000 pounds a year would cover all of your costs for the whole year. You
Yeah, yeah,
if you wanted to live not on a shoestring, you could live quite comfortably. You could live very comfortably in some cities, like perhaps in Vietnam or perhaps Thailand or Cambodia or some of the Asian countries. Bulgaria is a very cheap place to live at the moment. I think I could probably live comfortably off that budget here in Georgia. So and there's all places in Europe as well. But what I'm trying to say is that if you're willing to really dive into this question, what do I really want? And do I have, I think getting through the fear barrier is a big issue for a lot of people because it's, the idea of traveling on your own is something that not everybody does. It doesn't have to be on your own. You could be with a partner or a friend or whatever. And if you meet with other communities like nomad communities, expat communities, you can have a rich group of friends all over the place.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but again, for me, it's I love I love the playfulness of this kind of way of looking at life, and so
yeah, yeah,
um, wealth for me is part of that playfulness. I can give back to people through my work online. I receive by this incredible sense of freedom I have to travel and to go pretty much wherever I want, whenever I want. And that is one hell of a luxury in my view. And you don't have to be a multimillionaire to live that life.
I think that's really true. Yeah, I think I'm feeling the same freedom at the moment, and I think it's interesting. It's like a paradox. It's like that's why I'm teaching the work I teach at a deeper level now. Is things like you've just talked about, like what is your lifestyle and your budget? And many people don't even know this. They kind of just spend and don't really watch it and overspend and get caught up in these, like you say, numbing habits and lifestyles that try and flash on social media, and they don't actually stop and think about what they actually want. And it's like you say, it's quite you can live on a little. You don't have to wait and make 1 million or 2 million or something just to do it, and I think the
Yeah,
crypto work brought that up a lot for me because I've seen people chasing this. I'll be happy when this part happened when the
yeah,
crypto goes up, and it took longer to go up, and it may never go up, and then the bigger questions start to come up, and I think that's for me how I transform the business from just being about crypto to the whole wealth thing. The wealth consciousness feels like a deeper, more fulfilling work, and yeah, something I
mm,
really want to offer to people now. To think about this because yeah, you've hit the yeah, what is wealth on the head there with the and I guess travel's not for everybody, but whatever their thing is that they want, the peace can come at much lesser cost than you think. I think is what we're trying to
yeah,
say here.
absolutely. I mean, there's a point that I think is really something I realized maybe 20 years ago. And my circumstances were I was married, children, I had a fancy house, I had three cars, two motorbikes, two ride on lawnmowers, acres of land, you know,
Yeah,
uh, and the thing was that the amount of energy I had to put into maintaining that whole system, the amount of money that required, because there's no house on earth which doesn't need maintenance. And if you've got
yeah,
land, you've got hedgerows, you've got trees, you've got outbuildings, you've got cars, there's insurances to pay. You're in this continual cycle of administration and maintenance that's going on, which drains resources, particularly money. So if you can live more simply, if you can live with less, you need to spend less to maintain all of the things that you have. So right here in Georgia, I have a backpack and I have one other small sort of like hold all that I use as carry-on luggage. I mean, I can fit my backpack in the overhead locker anyway. So it's like
Yeah, yeah,
that's my whole life. I've got a laptop, I've got a phone, I've got some chargers, um, pair of sunglasses, a couple of change of clothes. And
yeah,
I realized that you can really be rich with a hell of a lot less than you. It just depends on what you value. What
yeah,
is it's really important to me. And every time over the last 20 years or so, my life's changed in many, many ways. And one of the cycles that I've noticed is I go through cycles of accumulation and then disposal, because the accumulation starts to become suffocating to me. I almost feel like burdened by all these possessions.
yeah. It's almost a subconscious, like you kind of get rid of it after. Yeah, I know what you mean.
And so
Yeah,
you buy something because it makes you happy, but it only makes you happy just very briefly. It brings some sort of level of content. Uh, it might be a TV or a bicycle, or it might be an ornament or a painting. Um, and over a while, you don't even notice the painting that's on the wall. You walk past. I remember
yeah,
clearing out my mum's house a number of years ago, 60 years of accumulated possessions. And there were hundreds of these little statues and figurines that she'd bought over the years. Um, and uh, it just it took us months to clear the house out. Clearing the loft out was just it was 60 years of possessions all dumped in the loft. And many of us do this. Many of us are living
yeah,
our lives this way in terms of we think accumulating things, possessions, qualifications, money, relationships, all of these things will make us happy. But ultimately, we're looking for something, in my personal opinion, we're looking for something much, much simpler and much more intrinsic. And that is what we go back to, that sense of contentment and ease in our nervous system,
yeah.
really. Uh,
And I mean, a lot of what you said about the hat, like, it's coming to mind to me, like, it normalizes very quickly, whether it's a car, a house, like
mm,
the normalization of it. Yeah, it's exciting at first, mate.
mm,
I think and also I think it's okay to experience things. But sometimes you
mm,
have to go through that to experience it. Because if someone is listening and they've not had that, they kind of say you can't see it. It's like anything, isn't it? But once you've had it, I
absolutely.
can relate to your
Yeah.
story because I've had things throughout my life, various amounts of money and possessions, and it's more freeing when it's gone. And we've just gone through this process. We were only 2 weeks into our journey, and we had to
Yeah.
reduce everything down and sell things. We had a huge TV and all sorts of things that we were like, oh, we're gonna miss that though. And we're not, we're watching TV a
Yeah.
lot less. And yeah, it's interesting process to reduce it down. We're not quite
Yeah.
down to just a rucksack yet, but we've got a couple of cases, but it's gone down a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I've gone through this process about 3 times now of really stripping things back. And each
yeah,
time I do it, there are moments of pangs of like, oh, I don't know if I want to get rid of that. Oh,
yeah,
God, I've got sentimental attachment to it. When it's gone, it quickly disappears. And
yeah, yeah,
for me, from the opposite perspective, you're wanting that new car. So, and the anticipation of it coming. The brand new BMW arrives on the driveway, looks shiny and new, it's fantastic to drive. But before you know it, it's just a car. And then
yeah,
five or
exactly
10 years
that.
later, it's gone. You're not, you've spent 60 grand on it, and now it's worth less than 30. And you think, was that worth like 30, 40 grand's worth of pleasure in the last few years? Uh,
Yeah,
y- just, and what we're briefly in what we're briefly experiencing is the end of desire.
yeah.
We've got this desire, we get the car, we've briefly experienced the end of desire, and then we realize we want the next thing.
Yeah, there's a quicker way to do it. I mean, for me, it was a men's retreat in Miami, and we drove like Lamborghinis, Ferraris around
Mm,
Miami, and we hired them out, and that got that experience out of the system. And it was fun,
mm.
but would I go out and buy one and want to do it every day? Probably not. It didn't. It's not.
Probably
You don't
not.
need to do that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you can have these experiences quite easy without actually doing that. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Sometimes spirituality can
No,
take people to feel well, it's wrong, can't it? But yeah, you do come to the
this
conclusion.
is
Yeah,
that's a very good point, Luke. And yeah, totally agree. There's nothing wrong with having possessions. There's nothing wrong with
no,
having nice experiences. It's just, it's just having also a sense of clarity about
yeah,
what it is and what it isn't going to give you.
yeah, exactly. What do you want it for? You know, the reason why you want it. If it's to do with your identity and it makes you feel like, yeah, there's wrong and the right reason for having it, I think,
Yeah,
is the way I'd look at it.
I don't want to give people the impression that, I'm judging them because they've got a nice car in the driveway or a nice house. You know, it's fantastic if that brings you lasting pleasure and you enjoy that process, then great, go for it. If it's all part of the play, I mean, I'd rather have a bicycle and an outdoor gym and a
Yeah,
sunny place to go and work out, go swimming. That's the things that kind of like make me feel alive, I guess, you know.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So,
it's
yeah,
got,
it's interesting.
I'm regressing. I'm going back to childhood, living out of a suitcase kind of thing, and going back to things that I enjoyed when I was a boy.
Yeah, I think that's some of it. You see, it's just what's right for you, and it is really what's right for you. But I've had the same experience as you. As possessions get more expensive, things you buy, of you fly first class and business class and things like that. It's an experience, and then it's like actually,
Mm.
you don't need it. You just don't need it. It's
You
interesting, isn't it, to see that happen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a first class seat is very nice sometimes. It's really lovely, and I've been lucky enough to experience that, and that can be a really lovely way of making travel
Travel,
more,
yeah,
more pleasant. Airports are stressful enough as they are, but for me, um, I guess it comes down to just, and it's still a process of. I'm still going through a process of discovery with this whole thing. But the one thing that seems to be consistent that I that I notice is traveling lightly is is something that I really love. I really love traveling lightly, but I don't just mean that in a literal way. I mean that in a metaphorical way.
yeah, yeah,
In a sense of I love the idea of not being burdened by a load of mental baggage.
right,
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
you
And
know,
when did you finish? Because I know this about you, the pilot. When did this finish? Was that, did you say to COVID or
I
was it sooner?
yeah, it was COVID. It was towards the end of the COVID sort of period. I resigned rather than take retirement. I resigned, which is almost unheard of in the company. They were worrying about they were worrying what's going on. Why is this guy resigned?
Yeah.
Because it was a good job, and
Big
from a
step.
lifestyle
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
it was great. It was good, well paid, travel perks and things. But it was towards the end of 2021. A number of factors were involved. My mum had just died, and there was the COVID thing, and there was a business opportunity that I was investigating with my girlfriend at the time, and all of these things came together and gave me that push that I probably needed, and it wasn't easy. It didn't make life
I bet it was.
easier. It didn't make life
No, no.
easier for a while. I retrained, and I had to go through a number of shifts, as it were. But just like anything, if you want to grow, you might have to go through a period of discomfort.
Yeah. We had I
Um,
had a similar experience around COVID. We gave up business we had for, it was about 20 years. We had like my wife's hairdresser and we had this salon business. We had a few salons and lots of employees and it was a burnout and it was just time to let it
yeah,
go. And it was hard. Yeah, it was the same thing because you got this comfort and this security around that life and you don't know what's going
yeah.
to happen next.
I
It's
mean, I don't want to exaggerate, but to me, I felt like I was dying a slow death doing the job.
yeah,
I'd done everything that I could have done within that line of work. I'd had all sorts of amazing experiences, but I was working with colleagues who, you know. it was all just getting very staid, and I could feel myself realizing that if I was going to do anything else with my life, if my life was going to grow and develop, I just couldn't stay doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to judge anyone else who stays within that work and loves it, and that's great and that's fantastic. I just realized that for me, I'm not somebody who can grow when I have a safety net. I've got to get rid of the ties if I'm going to grow and
Yeah.
develop. And to me, I never look back really after that. As I say, it didn't necessarily make life easier.
No, this is and it's the thing we fear. I think a saying I always refer back to is the cave we fear to enter lies the treasure we seek, and it usually does feel really sort of scary, and like, but usually once you leap, good things start to happen. But it's not comfortable. No, it's definitely not
No,
comfortable.
no, it's not. But to me, in terms of inquiry, in terms of awareness, consciousness, and stuff, um, it was absolutely what was
The
necessary.
right
You
thing.
know,
Yeah.
I think I thought I'd done a lot of inner work, and it was at that period then I realized that I still had a long way to go. But for me,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is what life is all about, really. It's about that voyage of discovery, of self-definition, of understanding how did I get here? Where am I going? And what's really going on. And and as I say, that work continues. But it's
I think
lovely.
that's it. Within that's what it's about the inner work, and it's. I spent maybe 20. I've been into that stuff since I was young, but I didn't really start doing it till around 2020. And
Yeah.
like you say, taking leaps and actually taking action, all the stuff you read, and you can read it, but you don't really know it. You kind of understand it intellectually, and you apply little bits, but
Yeah,
getting deeper, you have to do it, don't you?
you do. And the
Yeah.
rubber sooner or later has to hit the road. You can read all about it. You can understand quite a lot of it. But it's not until you are challenged, you personally challenged, uh, to face your fears, to feel all that needs to be felt, all that pent up anger and
Mhm.
grief and shame from past your past, and as you start to face that, you are going to have to feel it, and that's where the
Yeah.
challenge comes. And that's been the biggest challenge for me, I think, in these recent years, is realizing that if you're willing to put yourself through a period of discomfort, you will deepen and you will grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. The map of
and
consciousness comes up for me there because, like, I always think the deeper you go to the lower levels of consciousness, the higher you go at the other end. It's like you can't
yeah.
go to the higher levels. Otherwise, you kind of stay nicely in the middle, don't you?
Well, it's the hero's
Yeah.
journey, isn't it? Because it's like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you 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 have to be willing to go into the darkness, into that dark cave of all of your own
Yeah.
stuff that you've been avoiding your whole life. And I think this is one of the reasons why I think doing things like travel, trying something different, living minimally, puts you in a position where you are a little more naked than you would otherwise be in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's
Um,
not all smooth running, is it? You get to it.
no,
Like
no,
the
no.
Airbnb, I like the Airbnb thing's great, and I love the fact I've got no bills and council, all these. It's just one payment, which is great. There's no electricity bill and so on. But also that, I've not got my usual pillow. I'm trying to sleep on this little
Exactly.
flat pillow or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I've got a really nice little Airbnb here. I've got my own kitchen and bedroom, bathroom, and so on, and it's a nice veranda outside. But there's a dog that keeps barking, and
yeah,
there's
little
guys
things.
doing
Yeah,
some work on the building next door. So there are these little irritations, and I've got some bites from a mozzie or something, I think.
oh, I had that on my.
Um,
I've got
but
bits up to like
but
crazy
that's
here when I
just
first arrived. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. But to me, there's a certain pleasure in realizing that nothing will be perfect.
yeah,
You
yeah.
keep chasing perfection, you can keep chasing bliss, but actually you're being asked to use those irritations as a way of investigating,
Yeah.
your dissatisfactions, your discomforts. And yeah, and so this is a play, and then you end up with us having conversations like this, which I is one of my favorite things to do. Actually, is to have conversations like this because it's it's like with certainly with a like mind, it's it's just a beautiful thing, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know, even if what if even if only a few others, I don't know, motivated to look at life in a slightly different way, then job done.
Yeah, and it's been great doing this because I'm just finding my way with the podcast, and sometimes I set questions. It depends on who it's with, but I thought with you, we just socialised, and it's gone well. You know, we're just
Yeah.
bouncing off different subjects. But yeah, I mean, we've got another 10 minutes or so. What else shall we talk about? Well, what feels good?
Well, I mean, yeah,
Shall we
I
get?
mean,
Yeah,
the crypto thing is quite interesting because, you know, we
yeah,
first met, and the thing that drew me to you was just, you know, you were talking about you were, you know, this was a few years back, and it was wealth consciousness, and that was really interesting to me because there's almost, well, I know that there are people in this sphere that talk about this stuff, but it's quite rare to meet somebody like yourself who's talking about wealth in such an open way with a different spin. And and to me, when I came to you, strangely, it wasn't really about making myself richer in a way. Even though, you know, we were talking about crypto and crypto investment, and crypto's a bit flat at the moment, has been for a while, hasn't it? So,
yeah,
um, but
yeah. My thoughts on crypto at the minute are I think we had this, we're kind of coming through the speculation stage now. And what is this really? What's the innovation? What are the regulations? So I think we're now entering a stage of maturing, you know, for it. And people are just waiting. They're waiting for more certainty as they always do. Yeah, it
yeah,
seems that way.
well,
Yeah,
that's an interesting thing because I think that one of the things that I've learned, or had to learn the hard way, and probably the greatest lesson of these last 5 years or so of my life, is that you have to be patient. You have to learn to wait. And
yeah,
sometimes the lesson that you're being asked to learn isn't to push, isn't to overthink, isn't to force things. It's to sit and what allow things to come that will naturally come. And I think that we live in such a world now where everyone's chasing and pushing and fighting, and actually there's a real great demand within the human psyche and the human heart to learn how to wait, learn
yeah.
patience, to be to use this time to get a little bit bored rather than chase, push, because our nervous systems can't deal with the level of stress that we have.
That's what I loved about crypto and the work I did
Oh,
with my
life isn't
clients.
working
You
out.
know, well, we
Hmm.
could skipped a bit there, didn't we? You're back. We're back. Yeah, sorry,
Skipped
what
a
was you
bit, yeah.
saying?
That's all right. No, you go ahead.
Um, yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, the thing I loved about what I've loved about the crypto journey is, and the clients I've been with, it really does hold a mirror up to how people feel about wealth and money. I see that world is crazy, and it was crazy. It's been crazy for the last 4 or 5 years. You meet all kinds of characters there's scammers, there's people get overexcited and emotional, and all kinds of emotions come up around wealth and money. It's just interesting to see. I think that's what how other businesses evolved
Hmm.
into the wealth revolution around that. But yeah, it's a whole gym for learning about money and wealth. I think for a lot of people, um, and also letting
Yeah,
go,
and
like
it
you
comes
just said.
back
I
to,
think yeah, letting go.
yeah,
Yeah,
letting go. I mean, ultimately, you're letting go of an identity because ultimately, I think what we subconsciously, what's really going on is that we imagine ourselves to be a different person when we have that million or 2 million pounds in the bank or assets or whatever. We actually imagine ourselves as being a better, healthier, more content person. And the reality is, everything that we want is available to us right now. What
yeah,
we really want is, so for example, we think £1 million will make us feel safer, happier, more joyful. But what we
I,
really want is the feeling inside of that, which isn't
yeah,
going to come in a year's time or 10 years' time when our pension has grown or our bank balance has grown or we've paid off the mortgage. When all these criteria are met, I tell you, I guarantee you, none of that happiness will come because I've done it myself multiple
yeah,
times. I've done it myself. I've accumulated. I've had the house. I've had the car. I've had the holidays, the second properties. Uh, the money in the bank. It doesn't make it. It's not going to give you what you want. What you really
no,
want is a sense of safety, love, ease, and a sort of like vibrancy. That's what most of us are actually wanting, but that's
chasing,
available
yeah,
to you within your nervous system right this minute, right now. You just have to see what's in the way.
yeah. And this is what I hear from so many clients, or that people who have experienced wealth, even ones that go as far as like, I've worked with a client that's, I don't know what his net worth is, but I guess it's something like 500 million. He's a very wealthy family. Same worries and issues and insecurity. What am I going to do with the money? The market's going to crash soon. The whole market, the dollar's going down completely. Where am I going to put it? I'm moving it all into crypto. Like the same fear of losing that. So yeah, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter. It don't
yeah. I
solve
mean,
anything really.
the
No.
more you have, the more you fear losing in a way,
Yeah, yeah,
which is why I do think there is a sort of happy medium in terms of assets about, obviously having absolutely nothing, no, not a penny to your name, and no food coming in and no roof to shelter under, can be a pretty miserable existence
yeah,
for a lot of
yeah,
people. Again, it does to a certain degree depend on your, outlook. I remember reading Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, and talking about
yeah.
how I think he lived on a park bench in London for the best part of a year. And I can guarantee you, you can't live in London on a park bench for a year and not suffer some kind of hardship.
That sounds like
But he was living in this sort of state of, he was pretty blissed out by the sound of it. And, but it just goes to show you, even in the most quite difficult, unpleasant circumstances, if you, if you're experiencing reality how it actually is, in the absence of that false identity, that illusory mind made me, if you're living in the absence of that, you can pretty much be at ease with whatever is going on.
mm,
And, people in chronic pain and so on are probably going to argue against that point, and to a certain degree, they're right. But we're ultimately talking about psychological suffering here. And if you really want to get the root of it, is that, a lot of our direction in terms of wealth accumulation is ultimately we're misunderstanding what's really required.
yeah,
We're assuming that we have some psych. Once we've got these things, we'll be happy. So let's say for example, owning a building like Trump Towers in New York. Who owns Trump Towers? Well, you say Donald Trump owns Trump Towers, but he only owns it because everyone agrees that he owns it. And so it starts to become and money. So for example, I hand you a £20 note, but it has absolutely no intrinsic value. It's just a promise that you will get that uh, money. You can then buy food with it and so on. But it's not real. And all of these concepts about ideas, it's all it as you start to dig into this kind of stuff, it just gets more and more just gets more and more
it's more,
fascinating.
yeah, it does. I agree. That's kind of like I said, my journey's been. I've seen people with lots of money worrying more about it, and then those like I'd say a more spiritual level of reach where they realize that it's all the universes or God or whatever you call it, and they don't own anything, and they kind of let go to that point. They still serve, and they just focus on serving, and they live a good lifestyle. The money comes in anyway. in contrast to that's what I believe is true kind of way of you know reaching a freedom, a financial freedom. Believing
Yeah.
everything's always provided to you. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to do that because we all live, when the money starts getting low or something, and you go for a stage of that, the fear comes up, don't it, for most people?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does for me. I mean, I'm, I would say, in terms of global wealth, I'm reasonably well off. Certainly, I can survive. I'm confident as long as I'm not crazy and don't start buying Lamborghinis every year,
Yeah.
I'll be fine. Not that I'm interested in Lamborghinis particularly. But it's like, but it's just, but to me,
Yeah,
it isn't about
you
how
stewarding
much
it well, I guess. Yeah, you
I'm
steward in the
stewarding
wealth
it
well. Yeah,
reasonably well. Yeah,
yeah,
I would say that I used to think I was absolutely lousy with money, and I've realized actually I'm actually quite good. Most of the reason I'm quite good with money, or better than I used to be, is I just don't go crazy with what I spend.
yeah, yeah,
I'm fairly, I like healthy food. I like to go and live in nice places. And I like to be able to move around whenever I want to. But I don't go out, I don't go crazy with cars or houses or shopping for clothes or anything like that.
yeah.
I'd
It's
rather
the
have a
right
nice
season, and
hobby on a
that's
rooftop.
yeah, and that's it. And it's balancing your life. This is what I'm teaching in the Wealth Revolution, and the work I'm doing now is there's different seasons as well. If you're in survival or crisis, you've got to match that. If you're in security, you've got to look after it still to thrive, to carry on thriving. So I see a lot of people. I have like a model which goes kind of you're in financial crisis. Second one is survival, security, um, thriving, financial freedom. And surrounding that, you've kind of got the wealth consciousness and wealth stewardship, and you've got to be appropriate for whichever season you're in. But it's really important if you're insecure and you've got a amount of money to carry on thriving and stay thriving, not go backwards to survival, not to steward it well, isn't it? Because I see
Absolutely.
it
I
all the
mean,
time. I see
yeah.
clients that have got. I had one client that was bringing in. I mean, it wasn't all profit, but 250K months on this landscaping
Wow.
business in Nashville, Tennessee, and a young lad, doing amazing at sales, but he's not stewarding it all. It's just he's having this lifestyle that almost gets rid of it all so quickly, and he wonders where it's all gone. So it's that's the key to it, I think, stewardship of it, and yeah, being conscious of your lifestyle.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Just being, and that's a really healthy thing to do. I mean, a lot of people, people that may eventually listen to some of the things we're saying might say, "Oh, well, it's easy for you to say this, that, and the other," but a lot of people lack the faculty to um, to really reflect on their whole financial um, approach. And
yeah,
to have guidance from someone like you is just incredibly helpful. But I think it's worthwhile going a little bit deeper and just looking philosophically. What is it I really want out of life?
yeah,
And most people, particularly in the Western world, Europe, UK, North America, and so on, have way more wealth than they possibly can really imagine. That I went through an exercise. I was going through a bit of fear last year because I was looking at my pension because I'd reached a stage where I could access my private pension, and one of the biggest things that was coming up for me is that, oh my God, this is a finite resource. I've got to be quite careful with it. I don't want to overspend. I don't want to take too much money out. How long can I leave it, and so on. But one of the exercises I went through was comparing my wealth to global wealth, the average person's
mm,
wealth, both in Europe and the world. And I was quite surprised, actually. If you look, you might be surprised actually where you are. If you tot up your
yeah,
whole total assets, you might be surprised that you're actually way better off than you thought you were. Certainly not necessarily from your neighbour, or not necessarily from in comparison to your compatriots in a country like the UK or Switzerland or Germany or something like that. But if you look at it from a global wealth perspective, you
yeah,
start to see, oh, if I compare myself to wealth in Mexico or Vietnam or Thailand or
Yeah, you can bring
well,
more gratitude into it,
Africa,
can't you? That
you can
sense, yeah,
bring exactly. You can start to say, "Oh, actually, I'm okay. I've got a roof over my head. I've got food to eat. I'm warm. I've got a hot shower." Somebody dropped one interesting one recently. That up until 50 years ago, no one was having hot showers.
yeah. This is that, and that, yeah. You can find
Yeah.
gratitude in anything, can't you? Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a mentor I had that used to call it he did a gratitude practice where he said you're born with four aces, in the pack. Like, if you was to change the time you was in, you probably wouldn't choose some of the past times. You wouldn't put the ace that you've got back in the pack and draw again because you wouldn't want to be born when they had no showers or whatever it is. And he'd do
Mm,
this on all of them, health wise. What's your body like now? You might have some health things, but you probably, you're not born unable to walk or anything like that. So would you risk putting that ace back in the pack to get another one out to see what comes up? So you kind of, I forget what the rest was, but I think it was the location you're in and things like that. And it was a really interesting way to feel grateful for what you've got now. Without would you swap any of it out? Probably not. Because you've probably drawn four aces. It was really good. You know,
yeah.
perspective to look at it from. Yeah.
I know we're coming up to the end of time, but there's one
Yeah,
little
that's
anecdote
okay.
that just came up to me. It was when my daughters were quite young. We were coming up to Christmas time, and I remember them. They'd started to reach an age where they were starting to get to what making requests of what they might like for Christmas present, Santa Claus and stuff like this. And
Yeah.
I was going away in the run up to Christmas. I had this long employment with. I was working for a company called Air Tours International, and we got the Hajj contract where we went out to Indonesia, and we were flying pilgrims from Indonesia to Jeddah for the Hajj, the pilgrimage, and we were in a place called Banjarmasin, and these me and my colleagues were walking down the street, and it was uh, really hot day, and the streets were, you could see there was a tremendous amount of poverty. But these kids were running along behind us, trying to think of a few words, English words and things. They're talking about football, and we, in the end, we jumped on a little boat and asked the fish, I think it was a fisherman, if he would just drive us up the river, along the river. Anyway, these kids couldn't come on the boat, so they ran along the bank of the river, and they were shouting and screaming and waving. I don't think I've ever seen such happy kids. And they had a plastic bag that they were pulling along behind them as a kite on a string. And I just remember I can't get over the joy and the happiness that within these kids. And I was thinking, in contrast, my daughters and all the kids back in the UK were worrying about how many presents they were going to get, what kind of presents they were going to get, and often moaning and whinging about what they didn't get or they didn't get enough or
Yeah.
the toys are broken. And yet these kids were the happiest ones, and they were running along the bank of the river. And it's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes things do not bring us contentment. It's much more about noticing, being in the moment. And this is why I think we got so much to learn from children, being present in the moment, learning or remembering how to play with life. I think
Mm.
that's one of the key things that
Definitely.
I
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
have had to relearn.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we always feel like we want to do something, don't we? Like, so you just get caught up in that energy if something needs to be done or I need to get
Mm.
something or I'm chasing something. But yeah, just living in the now's the key to
Yeah,
happiness, I think, really. Isn't
adulting, I think it's called, isn't it?
it?
We've got to be
Adulting.
adulting, you know. We've got to be doing something serious. We've got to be gaining, improving, accumulating, or something. Kids aren't interested in that. They're interested in joy, that being in the moment, being present, playfulness. With sometimes with just the simplest of things.
Yeah.
Reminding ourselves
Yeah.
of that is a very valuable lesson. Certainly has been for me anyway in recent times.
Yeah.
Just one of the
Yeah.
reasons
That's
why I was
true.
down at the outdoor gym this morning in the skate park. Um, and it just the vibe there is just great. It's just very simple, enjoyable. a coffee in the sunshine. What more do you need?
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we'll finish up there then, I think. Just trying to think of any final thoughts, or I think we've summarized a lot. It feels like we've covered a lot of I guess deeper thoughts on wealth and what it means, the meaning behind it, lifestyle, deeper consciousness stuff. Yeah, any last thoughts for you? Any
Um, I guess that just for me, uh, wealth and happiness are and contentment are really worthwhile things to explore and to
yeah,
ask yourself about. Um, and it's just another avenue into that deeper work of what really makes it what really makes me happy, what really is this life on earth all about. And wealth and consciousness is one of those avenues in which you can use to explore
yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah, and I think it's often sometimes when people get too spiritual or too into the inner work, they can sometimes disregard it and think it's not important. But I think it is. It's still a part of it. It's still something you need to think about. The
Yeah,
stewardship of
and
money, the thought process behind it, like you've said, and how you relate to the things you want to buy and the lifestyle. It's all part of it,
yeah,
I think.
and
Yeah,
as I say, I'm not just because I live my life the way I do, fairly minimally and simply, doesn't mean to say that there's any harm in having a nice
no,
house in the countryside or on a mountainside and having nice skiing holidays and a car. There's nothing wrong with any of that, just as long as as long as it's not an avoidance exercise,
yeah, yeah,
or being or or a reflection of something much sort of a deeper level of unconsciousness where you're chasing these things and it's never really bringing you any peace or happiness, and often the opposite. And
yeah,
that's why it's such a valuable thing to talk about and to experience, I think.
right, yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll finish up there. And thanks again for coming on. It's been a great chatting to you and just doing it organically like that, just seeing where it went. And I think
Yeah, it's
some
great.
good subjects there. We
Pleasure.
got some good stuff. Thanks.
Yeah.
Have a
Cheers, Luke.
great rest of your day.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks, mate.
See you soon. Bye.